Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. Thank God we are through the Origin affected rounds. Goodbye and good riddance. Round 20 this week, which does mean we only have 8 more weeks of the regular season left. Still plenty to play for many teams. Some teams overperforming and some under. Let's see what round 20 has in store. But before we do get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 20, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our supporters. If you do want to show some support, please check out SpinBet. We've been doing some awesome boosted odds over on SpinBet, most of which have got up, which is great. We obviously have our free Discord server, which I share my own personal bets and tips. We are up over 70 units year to date in there, so make sure you join the Discord. And if you do want to get access to some of the most cutting-edge NRL data tools and analysis, do consider becoming a Patreon member. Again, the reason we are up so many units this season is because of that analysis, and it can be yours for as little as $5 a week. All of the links for everything on screen is in the video description. So big thank you once again to all of our current members, and thank you if you do choose to check us out. Now, before we do get stuck into my tips for round 20, let's as always look back at last week. So last week we tipped 4 out of 5 games. I did change 2 of my tips. I did change from the Finns to the Rabbitohs and from the Knights to the Sea Eagles. But obviously that doesn't matter now because we still would have been 4 out of 5. But overall, a really good result. I'm glad we were on the right side of the Dragons game. I did think they were being overlooked quite a lot. They certainly proved that to be the case. Still running at almost 60% for the season. Certainly been a disappointing season by my standards, but still well above average. Now, if you don't know by now, we do run a subscribers tipping comp, and Cornish Hua is still atop the ladder after 19 rounds. It is getting tight at the top though. Number 2 Turbo and Auntie hot on his heels. And still a lot of people in that top 20 with lots to play for, with only a couple tips determining from the top 5 all the way down to the top 20. So good luck to everyone in the tipping comp this week. Let's get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 20. Alright, round 20 gets underway on Friday night with the 11th placed Canberra Raiders taking on the 12th placed NZ Warriors at GIO Stadium. Starting first with Canberra, the Raiders' form slump continued in round 18, and they are now yet to record a win since round 11, losing to the Newcastle Knights at home 12 points to 16. The Raiders, they certainly showed an improved effort for the full 80 minutes, but are clearly in a dull patch mentally and can't seem to shake the cobwebs off. Adam Cook, I thought, looked pretty comfortable in his first game as an NRL halfback and put up some really good spirals and certainly kicked his side onto the front foot, but they lacked just some of that killer instinct on attack. In terms of teams list for the Raiders this week, Jamal Fogarty, he is expected to be named and return from that torn bicep that has kept him sidelined since round 7. And as for the Warriors, they had their second bye of the season last week, but suffered a cruel and controversial golden point loss to the Bulldogs in round 18, 13 points to 12. Regardless of the way it ended, it was a really gutsy performance, given that they lost their back 3 just after half time and ended the game with just one person on the bench. Mitch Barnett was absolutely superhuman once again, running for over 226 metres with 56 tackles, only missing 2, and in the process earned himself an Origin debut on Wednesday. Now, in terms of teams list for the Warriors this week, Charles Nicoll-Klokstad, Dalen Watene-Zelezniak and Marcelo Montoya will likely be unavailable this week. Sean Johnson, he could also be a surprise inclusion given the bye week, but is listed to return within the next fortnight regardless. And as I just mentioned, Mitch Barnett, he is part of Origin 3 this Wednesday, and so personally I would expect him to be rested given the travel and the short turnaround. Alright, looking at the two sides head to head, the Warriors, they have won 4 of the last 6 games at GIO Stadium and 5 of the last 7 games overall. And normally between these two sides, the games are really close, with just 3 games being decided by more than 13 plus points since 2016. So maybe taking either side by 1 to 12 points is a safe bet. The live odds, thanks to our friends at SpinBet, currently have the Warriors at a slight $1.82 favourite, with the Raiders bouncing back at $2 even. The points line is currently 1.5 points. Certainly a very important game for both sides. Obviously both sides just floating around outside the 8 and will need to win a majority of their fixtures from here on out if they are to qualify. But I am going to take the biased approach and take the Warriors by 1 to 12 points. I really do think it's a coin flip game, especially if the Warriors are missing a good chunk of their starting back 3. But again, I have to tip with my heart and take the Warriors. 1-12. Alright, moving now to the first of 3 games on Saturday night, starting first with the 15th placed South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the last placed West Tigers at Industry Group Stadium. Alright, starting first with Souths, the Bunnies' winning streak came to an end, coming unstuck against the Dolphins, 38 points to 26. Souths really were their own worst enemy in that second half, coming up with some inexcusable errors, none more so than Jack Whiten missing touch with the game on the line. The Rabbitohs massively missed the kicking game of Latrell Mitchell, both in general play and the goal kicking, with Souths scoring 6 tries, the same amount as the Dolphins, but only being able to convert 2. In terms of teams list for the Bunnies this week, Jai Arrow has undergone season-ending surgery, but it isn't all bad injury news for the Bunnies, with both Savila Havili and Tavita Totola expected to make their returns this week. Cam Murray is the only Rabbitohs player involved in Origin on Wednesday, but I assume he'll probably back up given what's at stake for Souths. And as for the Tigers, they couldn't beat the Sharks for the second time in 2024, instead getting absolutely torched 58 points to 6. Wests had no answer for the energy of Cronulla and once again spent 10 minutes down a man through ill discipline, and once the Sharks train got rolling, there was no stopping it. The poor old Tigers have had a really mixed bag season. They looked semi-decent early, but the wheels have well and truly fallen off now, and I think it's time to start thinking about personnel changes for next season. In terms of teams list for the Tigers this week, Api Coruscant, he did leave the field early with a calf complaint, so could be in doubt this week. Alex Seyfarth, Justin Olam and Alex Twal are also in doubt with a range of injuries. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Souths, they have won 10 of the last 13 games against the Tigers. This will, though, be the first time they'll meet at Industry Group Stadium, but Wests have lost 4 of their last 5 games at the ground, while Souths have won 3 of their last 6. The live odds currently have the Bunnies at $1.30 favourites, with the Tigers coming back at $3.50. The points line is currently 10.5. Fairly straightforward one for me. I think the Rabbitohs can bounce back after their loss against the Dolphins, and what better side to do it than the Tigers. So for me, Rabbitohs 13+. Alright, moving now to the second game on Saturday, we have the 10th placed Newcastle Knights taking on the 13th placed, that's right, the 13th placed Brisbane Broncos at McDonald Jones Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Knights, they almost failed to fire a single shot against the Sea Eagles, scoring a late try to avoid being held scoreless, 44 points to 6. The Knights were never in that game. They came up with some really ordinary fifth play options and were physically outworked and out-wrestled around the ruck. They certainly missed the likes of Gagai and Best coming out of yardage and on attack, and obviously no Kalen Ponga certainly left them looking very flat at both ends of the field. In terms of teams list for the Knights, as I just touched on, Ponga, Best and Gagai are part of Origin Game 3, but given where the Knights are on the ladder, I would expect them to back up if they do make it through without injury. And as for the Broncos, after making the grand final in 2023, the Broncos' 2024 campaign may almost be over after suffering a 26 to 30 point loss to the St. George Illawarra Dragons. The Broncos were really slow out of the blocks. They were unable to get on the front foot until around midway through the second half, with handling errors and inexperience really coming to the front. Katoni Staggs had a really mixed night for the Broncos, with moments of brilliance including that late try double, but his cynical sin binning in the first half really allowed the Saints to get a roll on. In terms of teams list for the Broncos this week, Payne, Haas, Reece Walsh and Patrick Carrigan are all part of Origin on Wednesday, but I obviously doubt they'll be rested given the Broncos' position on the ladder. Adam Reynolds is nearing a return, but is likely still unavailable for a week or 2. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Broncos, they have won 10 of the last 4 meetings. That does include 4 straight. Newcastle, though, they have won 2 of the last 3 games at McDonald Jones Stadium. The live odds currently have the Broncos at $1.65 favourites, with the Knights coming back at $2.25. The points line is currently 4.5. I do suggest if you do want to bet, check out SpinBet, scan that QR code on screen. And if you do want to see who I'm betting on this week, also consider joining our Discord channel by scanning the other QR code. All of my bets, tips, all of that is completely free, so do consider checking us out. Oh man, this is a bit of a tough one for me. I think on paper you would assume the Broncos would win by quite a few, but given season form, it's tough. Knights at home, another, I guess, tick in their box. But I am going to back the Broncos to bounce back here. I think they have to win. They'll certainly be spurred on by the return of Haas, Carrigan, Walsh. I just think they have to win. Do I think they will, though? Maybe not. But I'm going to go Broncos, 1-12. And moving now to the final game on Saturday, we have a bit of a blockbuster showdown. Could potentially be game of the week, with the first placed Melbourne Storm taking on the high-flying third place Sydney Roosters at Amy Park. Alright, starting first with the Storm, they were another one of the teams to have a bye last week, but the week prior extended their winning streak to 5 with a 40-26 point win over the West's Tigers. As they have been all season, I thought Melbourne weren't great defensively, but they just had far too much class for the Tigers and were able to pour on plenty of points. Jerome Hughes has continued to put his hand up and impress with Munster sidelined, and with the likes of Pappenhausen and Fa'alongo pushing around the ruck, the Melbourne Storm are really never out of it. In terms of teams list for the Storm, Harry Grant is the only player involved in Origin, but has been in doubt for even that fixture, so we'll wait and see whether Harry is able to play following Origin. Nick Meaney, though, he is expected to return, while Nelson Asafa-Solomona and Bronson Garlick are both in doubt. And as for the Sydney Roosters, they will also be refreshed following a week off, but the week prior celebrated Jared Waerea-Hargreaves' 307th game with a comprehensive 42-12 point win over the Dragons. James Tedesco had an absolute field day, running for a ridiculous 324 metres with a try, 2 try assists and 13 tackle breaks. I honestly could spend about 10 minutes just on this game alone, giving almost every Roosters player a rap. Sam Walker, Angus Crichton, Connor Watson, etc. And while I won't do that, I will say that the Roosters are certainly living up to their expectations this season and are fast becoming hot favourites to challenge for another premiership. And in terms of teams list for the Chooks, Joseph Suali'i will return from suspension this week. Lindsay Collins, Spencer Leniu and Angus Crichton are all involved in Origin 3, and I imagine given the severity of this game, they will likely back up. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Storm, they have won 9 of the last 10 games against the Roosters overall. They've also won 8 of the 12 games ever between the two clubs at Amy Park. The live odds currently do, though, have the Roosters at $1.87 favourites, with the Storm coming back at $1.95. The points line is currently 1.5 points. Oh, as I said off the top, this is easily or could easily be the game of the round. This is a real litmus test for both the Storm and the Roosters, but for me, I do think the Roosters can get it done on the road and win just their 5th game ever at Amy Park. I think they've got far too much strike, and the Storm defensively have been very, very poor. So for me, the Roosters can get it done 1-12. Alright, and moving now to the first of 3 games on Sunday this week. Starting first with the 2nd placed Penrith Panthers taking on the 6th placed Dolphins at Bluebet Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Panthers, they had the bye last week, but the week prior managed to grind out a 14-6 point win over the Broncos. It was a really patient and classic Penrith performance, happy to engage in the long game grind before eventually capitalising on Brisbane's inevitable mistakes. Jerome Luai once again really impressed as a game managing number 7, but he'll likely be back at number 6 this week as Nathan Cleary is expected to return. So as I just touched on, Nathan Cleary is due back this week, while Luai, Edwards, To'o, Martin and Yo are all involved in Origin Game 3, but I would expect them to back up given the days between the games and obviously Penrith's ruthless mentality. Alright, and as for the Finns, they managed to hold off a second half resurgence from the South Sydney Rabbitohs, 36 points to 28. The Dolphins were really strong in that first 40, with the likes of Jack Bostock, Herbie Farmworth and Trey Fuller really causing problems for the Bunnies. Tavita Pangai Jr. was also very good in his first start as a Dolphin, running for almost 200 metres, scoring a try and breaking 4 tackles. They certainly didn't do themselves any favours in the second half, with errors and possession going against them, but to their credit, they did enough to slow down Souths and hold on for the win. Alright, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers, they won the lone meeting in 2023 by 24 points to 10. The live odds currently have the Panthers at $1.22 favourites, the shortest favourite of the week, with the Dolphins bouncing back at $4.20, and the points line is currently 10.5 points. Fairly straightforward one for me. I think the Panthers should be too strong, especially if Cleary does return and the Origin players back up. So Penrith 1-12. Alright, moving now to the second to last game of round 20, we have the 7th placed Manly Sea Eagles taking on the 14th placed Gold Coast Titans at 4 Pines Park. Alright, starting first with Manly, the Sea Eagles nearly completely shut out the Newcastle Knights, cruising into a 44-6 point win in front of yet another sold out crowd. After a really slow return the week prior, Tom Trbojevic was forced to return to fullback last week, and it was like a duck to water really. He scored a try, set up 3 others, and ran for almost 200 metres. To be fair though, the entire back 5 for Manly were incredible, none more so than Lehigh Hopewadi, who produced one of the more simple yet spectacular try assists of the year. I also thought the combination of Luke Brooks and Jamie Humphreys was good in place of DCE, with Humphreys, looking very, very comfortable in first grade and even scoring the opening try of the match. It's a bit strange it's taken the Sea Eagles so long to play him, and even stranger that they've given him away to, I believe, the Rabbitohs for next season, as he looks like a very, very good talent and will only get better with time and age. Now, in terms of teams list for the Sea Eagles this week, DCE and Tom Trbojevic are the only players involved with Origin, but should back up. Ben Trbojevic and Taniela Paseka are both expected to be available for selection this week. And as for the Gold Coast, the Titans have strung together 3 wins for the first time since 2021, beating the Eels 24 points to 16. The Gold Coast started fast but struggled to get out of their own end in the second half. Jaden Campbell, though, was brilliant in the halves, starring with 3 try assists, and he's really begun to make that 5/8 jersey his own, combining really solid ball playing with his obviously X-factor speed. In terms of teams list for the Titans, Mo Fotuaika is the only player involved in Origin 3, but he'll likely be included, and that should be the only change for the Titans 17 this week. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Manly Sea Eagles, they have won 4 of the last 6 games against the Titans, but the Titans have won 2 of the last 3. The Sea Eagles do, though, however, have a good record at Brookie, and they've won 6 of the last 8 games between the two clubs. Ooh, this should be a cracking game. Obviously, Des Hasler up against his old club. I know they met earlier this season, and they certainly gave the Sea Eagles a bit of a shake. But I do think Manly should be too strong. I know the Titans have certainly found a bit of form lately, but I do think with Tom Trbojevic at the back, that the Sea Eagles are just a different beast. You could see the difference in performance from the week prior when Tom was in the centres to last week when he was at fullback. It was just night and day. They're a better side with Tommy at fullback, and I do think with him there and DCE back that they can beat the Titans for the second time this season. Alright, now moving to the final game of round 20, we have the 8th placed North Queensland Cowboys taking on the 5th placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Cowboys, they had their second bye of the season last week, but the week prior lost in Golden Point to the Sea Eagles 21 points to 20. It was a really messy game from both sides, and the Cowboys butchered so many good scoring opportunities. Scott Drinkwater, though, he was outstanding, running for almost 300 metres and kicking an incredible 2-point field goal to send the game to Golden Point, but disappointingly didn't get another chance during the extra time period. In terms of teams list for the Cowboys this week, Val Holmes, Tom Dearden, Jeremiah Nanai and Ruben Cotter are all involved in Origin, but will likely back up. Murray Taulagi, however, though, is out of Origin and out for the Cowboys with a hamstring injury. And as for the Bulldogs, they will be recharged after a week off, but produced their second consecutive Gold Point win the week prior, beating the Warriors 13 points to 12. Despite the controversy at the end, it was a highly entertaining game, but riddled with plenty of errors from both sides, but with Canterbury's much improved defence on show. Matt Burton obviously gets plenty of praise for icing that field goal 2 weeks in a row, but I really did think that Josh Curran, the likes of Reed Marnie, Max King were really, really strong through the middle and came up with some really big effort plays when it mattered most. In terms of teams list for the Doggies this week, Stephen Crichton is involved in Origin Game 3, but he'll be fit to go this week. Jaden Salmon is out with a broken jaw until around round 25. Josh Adokar, Drew Hutchison and Daniel Salufafita are still a few weeks away. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Cows, they have won 4 of the last 6 meetings overall. They've also won 4 of the last 6 games in Townsville. Now, rather surprisingly to me, the live odds currently have the Cowboys at $1.82 favourites, with the Bulldogs coming back at $2 even, and obviously a very, very short line of 1.5 points. I say it's surprising because I do like the doggies in this one. I think if you look at the points conceded on screen, right, the Cowboys have conceded over 400 points through 20 weeks, whereas the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs have only just cracked 260. Defense wins comps, defense wins games, and that is why I am tipping the Bulldogs by 1 to 12 points. The Cowboys are they do have plenty of points, but they love to concede, and I do think the doggies defense can get it done once again. They are the people's team of 2024, or at least for me anyway. I'm on the Dogs, apart from when they played the Warriors. So for me, the doggies can keep their climb up the ladder going with a win over the Cowboys in Townsville. Bang, just like that, we're done for yet another week. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to leave your tips and predictions in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you are new here. Leave a like on the video. Join our Discord. Check out SpinBet. Consider subscribing to our Patreon. All of that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.